Hello, welcome back. Today we're looking at personal finance, a very hot topic. Finance is really important in everyday life, so please pay attention. First up, we have a wage. A wage is paid an hourly rate. Most of us are probably paid wages compared to other types of pay. A wage for each week is multiplied by the normal rate of pay by the number of hours worked. So your hourly rate multiplied by the number of hours you put in that week. This does not include overtime, which is extra hours. So Georgina, she works for 42 hours and she gets a wage for the week 945. Let's try and figure out what's her hourly rate of pay. Any thoughts? First up, you want to convert it to a rate, which we talked about last lesson. So we want it in dollars per hour. So it's currently 945 per 42 hours. So we're going to convert the 42 to hour, which means divided by 42. So get out your calculator, 945 divided by 42. Hopefully you got Georgina's hourly rate as $22.5 per hour. Let's look at Sadiq. Sadiq works as a mechanic. He's paid $23.65 an hour. Calculate Sadiq's wage in a week if he works 38 hours. So this time we have the rate, dollars per hour, and we want to convert it to a larger amount. So instead of dividing, we're going to be multiplying. So get out your calculator, see if you get the same answer as me. 23.65 times 38. Hopefully you got an answer of $898.7 per hour. Now there's no expectation you have to do this in your head, but sometimes it might be useful to start to practice these concepts on a piece of paper instead of just using a calculator. Studies have shown that doing things on paper or in your head improves your mathematic ability. So try not to just depend on your calculator all the time. And there's our answers confirmed. All right, next is a salary. So I'm a teacher, I get a salary. It's a fixed amount paid to an employee for a job. It's a base amount and it's divided into weekly or fortnightly or monthly payments. I get paid fortnightly, which is really useful. I used to get paid monthly when I was a youth worker. That wasn't so useful because then I'd often spend the money too quickly, and coming to the end of the month, I ran out of money. You don't get any extra payments for overtime, so it's different to wages. So as you possibly know, a teacher like myself does a lot of extra work and we don't get paid any extra for that work. Sometimes we will get overtime pay, but it's very rare. So I've got a few more examples. This time Charlotte, she's getting paid an annual salary of $41,560. So if she works 42 hours a week, calculate her hourly rate of pay. Bit trickier, we've got some things to consider. So we want to again convert the number into dollars per hour. This time we have to figure out how many hours is she going to do annually in a year, and then divide the annual salary by that amount. So let's have a go. She works 42 hours per week. How many weeks in a year? Hopefully you know this, 52 weeks in a year. So let's do 52 by 42 to get the total amount of hours in a year, 2,184. We then divide the total amount, 41560, by that number that we just found, 2184. And you should have got $19 per hour, or 19.03, sorry, I didn't go to cents. Another way to do it, as you can see on the screen, divide the weekly pay, divide the total amount annually by the amount of weeks, and then divide it by the hours. That's another way to do it, you get the same answer. All right, let's have a look at Dimitri. He gets an annual salary of 63,700. That's a bit more like it. Poor Charlotte, getting paid not much. Let's calculate Dimitri's pay in a fortnight. All right, trickier. How many fortnights in a year? It's 26. So we're going to be dividing the total amount by 26. And that's his fortnightly pay. Maybe not trickier, I lied. And that's salary. Okay, so next is allowance. Allowance is an additional payment when the working conditions are difficult or unpleasant. So an example, if you work building roads, you might get a wet weather allowance. I don't know, if I ended up teaching extra students, so I had 40 students in my class, I might get an allowance. Extra amounts on my wage, or an extra amount on my annual salary. So you got Ryan, he's working in the wet weather, his allowance is $2.46. So you add that on top of his hourly wage to calculate his total amount. So normally his weekly pay, 35 times 22.5. But there's this extra amount, but only for 12 hours of the week. So we do his normal amount, 22.5 times 35, and the allowance times 12. And then we add those total amounts together to get the total pay. So I want you to have a go at some textbook questions now. See if you're getting the gist of salary, wage, allowance. All right, the next thing is overtime. Overtime is paid when an employee works more than the regular hours each week. So it's slightly different to allowance. It's just you do normal work, but it's over the top. And like I said, I don't get overtime as a teacher, I just get a salary. So this is if you have a wage, you do overtime. When you do overtime, you usually get a higher rate of pay. So if you work like a public holiday, you're doing overtime. So let's calculate her pay in a week. So she's getting paid overtime for 5 hours. So it's time and a half. And that's what I was talking about before. If you work like on Christmas Day, or sometimes if you work Sundays, they give you time and a half. Or sometimes you get paid double time and a half. So your normal pay for Natasha, she's getting paid time and a half, so 1.5 or 1.5 times 5 times the hourly rate. And then you add those two together. So she would have worked 38 hours, and then she worked 5 hours extra, which is time and a half. All right, so if you want to pause the video, have a go at some overtime penalty rate questions. All right, let's look at commission now. Commission is usually calculated as a percentage of the total values of goods sold. I have a friend who gets a commission because he works at Harvey Norman. So if he sells fridges, TVs, etc., he'll get an extra percentage on top of his wage or salary for anything he sells. Okay, so let's look first at this example with Jack. Jack is a computer salesman. he's paid a commission of 12% of all sales. So if he sold lots of computers and things, and he sold them all for $15,000, what commission would he get? Well, we simply times that by 12 over 100, because remember, percentage means out of 100. And he would get a commission of $1,800. All right, let's have a look at this. So we get 5% of 75,000. So she's going to get 3,750 for the first 75,000. Now we need to figure out the rest. So we need to minus the 75,000 away. Now I really recommend trying to do this bit without a calculator. Start to work on that mental maths. So 5,000 disappears. 23 minus 7. What's that? Hopefully you got 16. So 160,000 is going to be multiplied by the 2.5. It's $4,000 commission. So it's really important you communicate with whoever's reading your answer. Most likely me. Total commission is a really good way to communicate what's happening. So add the two commissions together, the first 75,000 and then 160,000 commission after that, you get $7,750 commission. All right, another thing, really important, piecework. It's when workers are paid for the amount of work they have completed. You might get a job where you have to produce a certain thing. So you might have to make cabinets, or you might have to build buildings. So you'll get paid for the amount of things you build. So if you build 20 cabinets, you'll get paid $1,000 for each cabinet, or something like that. So you got Michelle, she works at a factory. She gets paid this amount for 150 items. She sews, and then anything after that, she gets paid that amount. So you've got 2.75 times that, and then you've got to minus that away and times that amount by $3.35. So you can see here, very similar to the last example. Payment 1, and then she made another 145 of these items. I don't know, let's call them shirts. And then so you pay her $3.25 for all of those 145 shirts and add them together. I used to deliver newspapers, so I got paid for the amount of newspapers I delivered. So I think it was like 5 cents per newspaper or something like that. So have a go at some questions in the textbook on piecework and on commission. So well done for listening, hanging in there. The next thing we're doing is looking at all the different government allowances. So you're probably going to get at least one of these in your life at some point. So when you start studying at uni, you could get youth allowance or Oz study, depending on your circumstances. So I'd highly recommend doing your research and applying for youth allowance or Oz study when you finish school. Youth allowance works like this. So you can see these are your circumstances, and this is your maximum fortnightly payment. Oz study, very similar. You have to be at least 25 years old though. So pause your video, have a go at some textbook questions now.